Mom insisted. We apologized 1,000 times, yet couldn't name even one specific thing she did. I finished for her, my voice coming out quieter than I meant. I sat there with my hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had gone cold 20 minutes ago, watching steam rise from hers like we were in different seasons. She blinked at me, mascara clumped at the corners of her lashes, lips already beginning to purse into that offended line she does. The kitchen clock clicked loudly behind her. "What do you mean specific?" she said. "We've said sorry so many times. I can't keep track." We were in my parents' kitchen on a Sunday afternoon, sunlight making a rectangle on the tiled floor where I used to sit as a kid with my coloring books while dinner burned. It was the first time I'd been back in their house in over a year. My therapist thought it might help to have a controlled conversation, set some boundaries, maybe get actual closure. The plan was to stay for coffee, keep it under an hour, and leave if my chest started doing that tight, buzzing thing it does. I'd rehearsed sentences in my head all week. I felt hurt when, and what I needed back then was, none of them covered this feeling of watching my mother scramble for a single concrete memory in a laundry basket full of them. "What did you apologize for?" I asked. I made my voice as neutral as I could. Not snarky, not pleading, just a question. "You said you apologized 1,000 times. For what, exactly?" She shifted in her chair. The kitchen table wobbled a little, the same one we'd had since I was 8. The varnish worn off in semicircles where our plates always Saturday for, she said, fanning her hand vaguely in my direction. "For how things were. For mistakes. For the past. Why are you being like this?" That's her favorite follow-up. Not "what do you need?" Or, "I don't remember. Help me." Just a quick pivot into my tone, my attitude, my fault. She took a sip of tea and watched me over the rim of the mug like a cat. "For leaving me alone with Dad when he was drunk?" I asked. "For the time you locked me out overnight because I missed curfew by 12 minutes? For telling Nan I was dramatic when I had a panic attack in her bathroom?" Her face did this thing, a little wince that she smoothed over with a tight smile. "See, this is what I mean," she said. "You rehearse all these little details. You hold on to them. Normal people don't do that." I almost laughed. Came out as a short breath through my nose instead. I grew up in a house where everything looked fine from the street. We had hanging baskets in spring, a little decorative sign that said, "Welcome friends" by the door, fairy lights at Christmas. Our school uniforms were always clean. We did family barbecues and end-of-year presentations. People said things like, "Your parents are so involved," and "Your mom's always on the canteen roster, you're so lucky." I knew how it looked. Inside, you never knew what version of home you were walking into. Sometimes Mom was humming along to the radio, stirring sauce, asking about our day in that fast, distracted way. Sometimes she was smoke, all sighs and slammed cupboards, cutlery drawers yanked open so hard they jumped their stoppers. Dad came home from work one of two ways: quiet and tired, or loud. Loud usually meant he'd been drinking at the pub. For just one, that turned into 4 or 5. They never hit us. I feel obligated to write that, because it's what they always lead with whenever anyone suggests they did anything wrong. "We never laid a hand on our kids," Mom will say, like it's a gold star. Technically true if you don't count being yanked by the arm, shoved out of doorways, or having your shoulder squeezed hard enough to leave fingerprints. The thing that really did my head in wasn't the obvious blow-ups. It was the way everything bad somehow got folded back into being my fault. Like the night she locked me out. I was 16, walking home from a friend's birthday with my phone dead and my heart full of that strange mix of sugar and freedom you get from dancing in someone's garage under a string of LED lights. Curfew was 11. I checked the bus timetable wrong and got off a stop too late. By the time I jogged up our street, it was 11:12. I remember the exact minute because the porch light was off. Our porch light was never off. I knocked. Nothing. I knocked again, harder. I could see the blue glow of the TV through the curtains. Finally, Dad came to the door, opened it just enough to lean against the frame. He smelled like beer and toothpaste. "You're late," he said. 12 minutes, I panted. "Sorry, the bus?" He shut the door. Just shut it. I stood there, key in my hand, completely blank for a second. I thought it was a joke. I tried the lock. He'd slid the deadbolt from the inside. I knocked again, harder this time. My stomach was starting to fizz. Dad, open the door. Please. Through the wood I heard his voice, raised. You want to be an adult and ignore rules? Be an adult out there. Then nothing. I ended up sleeping on the front step with my school bag as a pillow, hoodie pulled over my knees. It was late spring, so it wasn't freezing, but the concrete leached heat out of me until my teeth chattered. The neighbor's cat came to sniff my shoe and promptly decided I was not its problem. Around 3 a.m., Mum opened the door, stepped out, saw me, and sighed like she'd found bins left at the curb. Get in, she whispered. Hurry up before he sees. She made me toast, pushed a plate toward me without looking. You know how he gets when he's worried, she said. Why do you push him like that? I apologized. Because what else do you do? I said, I'm sorry, I lost track of time, while my hands shook too much to hold the butter knife properly. That's the pattern Mum is calling apologies. To her, this conversation years later, at a kitchen table that smells like lemon and bleach, is evidence that they said sorry 1,000 times. You said, we're sorry you feel that way, I said now. It's not the same thing. Of course it is, she snapped. We apologized for how things made you feel. Dad, who'd been half listening from the armchair in the lounge, raised his voice just enough to carry. You never used to be this ungrateful, Kayla, he called. A bit of discipline and suddenly we're monsters. He still does this thing where he talks about me in the third person while I'm in the next room. It's like being a character in someone else's radio show. I could feel my shoulders creeping up toward my ears, that old instinct to make myself smaller. I forced them down. My therapist, Hannah, had made me practice in her office. Breathe in, drop your shoulders, feel your feet. I did that now under the table, toes pressing into the inside of my shoes. I'm not saying you're monsters, I said. I'm saying if you're going to claim you apologized, it would be nice if you could name what for. Mum let out a sharp laugh. You want a list? She said. Would that make you happy? Dear Kayla, we're sorry we couldn't give you a pony and a perfect childhood. There it is, I said before I could stop myself. What? The joke, I said. The part where you make it sound like I'm asking for something ridiculous instead of just being acknowledged. She rolled her eyes. You're twisting my words. I know how this all reads. You don't know me. You don't know my parents. Maybe it sounds like I'm looking for reasons to be mad. I get caught in that loop all the time. I'll be washing dishes in my flat, thinking about some old memory, and suddenly I hear my mother's voice in my head. Normal people don't dwell. And then I'm arguing with myself at the sink, telling myself to get over it while also internally 14 again. But then I'll talk to my younger brother, Josh, and he'll casually mention something that makes my blood go cold. Remember when Mom told Mrs. Patel you're just one of those depressed girls who reads too much? He'll say, and I'll be like, oh, right, it wasn't just in my head. Josh is the reason I agreed to come today, honestly. He still lives at home. He works nights at a warehouse and studies part-time, so being here is the path of least resistance for him. When I told him my therapist had suggested I try a structured conversation, he sent back a string of skull emojis and then, I'll be here if you need an excuse to leave. He wasn't home yet when I arrived. Just Mum at the sink washing an already clean mug and Dad pretending to watch the cricket. I stood in the hallway with my coat still on. Every cell in my body convinced I was 17 again, coming home from school to a house I had to check the mood in before breathing properly. Mum launched straight into it. No, how have you been? No, how's work? Just, we saw your little post. She meant the Facebook post. Rookie mistake on my part. I'd written something vague on my private account after a hard therapy session a few weeks back. Healing from your childhood is weird when your parents still want to be seen as the heroes of it. I'd posted. No names. No details. 15 likes. A few same comments. I forgot my aunt is a lurker. Apparently she screenshotted it and sent it to my mother with about 15 question marks. That's why we're here. Not because my parents missed me, but because their reputation took a tiny dent in the echo chamber of their relatives' group chat. We apologized 1,000 times, Mum said as I took off my coat, starting this whole conversation in the doorway before I'd even sat down. You're dragging us through the mud online. I didn't mention you, I said. Everyone knows who you meant, she shot back. We've explained over and over. You're choosing to stay angry. That's the part that digs under my skin. The idea that forgiveness is a switch I'm too stubborn to flip. As if it's about being generous enough, not safe enough. Okay, I said in the kitchen now, forcing myself back to the present. What do you think you apologized for? She sat back, like she was accepting a challenge. For the shouting. For how strict we were. For the drinking. There. She ticked them off on her fingers like that settled it. Okay, I said again. My voice shook, just a little. Can you remember one time you said those things? Like actually said them. To my face. She opened her mouth, closed it. We discussed it, she said. You said, let's not dwell on the past, I said. You said, we all made mistakes. You said, we're sorry if that's how you remember it. I could feel my heart thumping in my throat, but the sentences came out smooth, probably because I'd rehearsed them in the shower for 3 days. You never said, we're sorry we didn't protect you from Dad when he was drunk. You never said, we're sorry we laughed when you came to us with self-harm scars and told Nan you were just copying a TV show. Her hand jerked, the spoon in her mug clinking against ceramic. Don't you dare, she hissed, face flushing. Don't you dare make me sound like some kind of monster in my own kitchen. I swallowed. Then remember something, I said. She looked at me like I just slapped her. I remember plenty, she said. I remember working 2 jobs so you kids could have shoes. I remember sitting up all night with you when you had bronchitis. I remember. That's not what we're talking about, I said, softly, because if I let my volume creep up even a notch, this would turn into Kayla is shouting. See how unreasonable she is. I'm not saying you never did anything good. I'm saying if you really apologized, you should be able to name at least one thing you're sorry for. Silence. From the lounge, the TV murmured. Dad had turned the volume up. Classic. He does that when he doesn't want to be in the conversation but doesn't want to leave either. Background authority, just in case, ready to chime in with listen to your mother if he thinks he needs to. Josh texted me then, on my way. How's it going? I looked at the tiny screen under the table and wanted to crawl inside it. Fine, I typed. Then we're at the you're ungrateful stage. 3 dots appeared. LOL classic. Needs saving? Not yet, I wrote. But stay on standby. When people talk about going no contact with family on here, the comments split into 2 camps. One is, do it, protect your peace. The other is, but they're your parents. I've had both of those crowds living in my head for years. On one hand, I know life is easier when I don't have to brace every time the phone rings. On the other, there's that stubborn little kid part of me that still thinks if I just explain it right, this time they'll get it. Why is one apology not enough for you? Mum said now, interrupting my spiral. Why do you need us to grovel? I don't, I said. I just need to know you understand what you're apologizing for. Otherwise it feels like you're apologizing for me being upset, not for what happened. She stared at me. Her eyes were wet, but not in a way that made me reach for a tissue. More like a pressure valve hissing. So what, you want me to say I was a terrible mother? She shot back. Will that make you happy? I'm a terrible mother, Kayla. You win. I felt so tired. Like my bones were hollow. No, I said. I want you to say, I'm sorry I left you alone to deal with Dad when he was drunk. That's 1 sentence. You can even write it down if saying it is too hard. That's not fair, she whispered. You have no idea what it was like. He would have left if I'd pushed him. Then where would we have been? On the street? You think it was easy for me? There it was. The shift from we made mistakes to we were victims too. I've seen it enough times I could storyboard it. In her mind, this isn't about her failing to protect me. It's about me failing to appreciate what she did to keep a roof over our heads. I sat there, thumb worrying at a chip in my mug's handle, and realized something painfully simple. She is never going to say the sentence I want. Not because it's impossible, but because if she says it out loud, she has to live in a world where it's true. And that world is harder for her than the one where I'm just holding onto grudges. Josh arrived 15 minutes later like a chaotic angel. He walked in, kissed Mom on the cheek, nodded at Dad, and squeezed my shoulder deliberately. "Hey," he said. "You good?" "Yep," I lied. He grabbed a biscuit off the plate in the middle of the table and said, casually but loudly, "So, you guys still pretending you apologized for anything specific, or?" Mom gasped. "Excuse me?" I choked on my tea. "Josh," I hissed. He shrugged, the picture of innocence. "What? You all keep saying you've apologized a million times. But I don't remember any of them either. Maybe I was at work." He crunched the biscuit obnoxiously. Sorry. I'm just the spare child. I don't get the good scenes." Dad sat up straighter. "That's enough," he said. "We've addressed this. We had that family meeting after Kayla moved out." "You mean the one where you said, 'We're sorry things got out of hand, but you kids turned out fine, so it couldn't have been that bad?'" Josh asked. "Yeah, that was a banger." Despite everything, I snorted. Mom looked between us like we were speaking another language. "See?" she said, triumphant. "Even he thinks we apologized." Josh and I looked at each other. There was a whole wordless conversation in that glance we've been perfecting since childhood. He turned back to her. "I think you did," he said. "There's a difference. I don't know if that penetrated. It's like trying to staple mist to a wall sometimes. We didn't have some big dramatic blow-up after that. No plates were smashed. No one screamed. Eventually, Mom changed the subject to Josh's classes and whether he'd eaten. Dad went back to his commentary about the cricket. I sat there, my body still in the kitchen but my brain weirdly hovering near the ceiling, watching the scene from above. When it felt like a natural lull, I stood up. "I should go," I said. "I've got work early tomorrow." Mom looked at the clock like she couldn't believe time dared move without her permission. "Already?" She sounded offended, like I was leaving a party too soon. "Yeah," I said. "Thanks for the tea." She looked at me like there was something else she wanted to say. For a second, I let myself hope it might be the sentence. "Just once, just this once." Instead, she said, "Don't post about us on the internet again, please. It hurts." I nodded. Not a promise, just an acknowledgement. "Okay," I said. At the door, Josh hugged me properly. "Text me when you get home," he murmured into my hair. "Hannah would be proud of you. You didn't even cry." "I'm saving it for the bus," I joked weakly. Now I'm home, sitting on my secondhand couch with my laptop on my knees, doing exactly what my mother asked me not to do. Posting about them on the internet. Not to drag them, not to cancel anyone. Just to put the words somewhere that's not my own head, where they bounce off the same walls all day. I keep thinking about that sentence. "We apologized 1,000 times." It sounds so big and generous, doesn't it? 1,000. Wow. But if you can't name even one time, did it happen? If you say sorry for how someone feels but never for what you did, is that really an apology or just reputation management? I don't know if I'm going to go no contact. I'm not there yet. There are still small, stupid things that tether me, Josh mostly, and the way Mom makes this one chicken soup that tastes like childhood in a good way. I don't know how to hold both truths at once. They loved me in their way, and they hurt me in ways they refused to see. What I do know is that I'm done accepting imaginary apologies. If you're going to insist you've said sorry 1,000 times, you should be able to look me in the eye and say what for at least once. Until then, the only apology I really have is the one I'm finally giving myself. I'm sorry no one protected you when you were young. I'm sorry they pretended your pain was a phase. I'm sorry you had to write all this down on a stranger's website to feel like it matters. And weirdly, I'm a little proud too, because today I sat in that kitchen, heard the same old lines, and didn't swallow them whole. I let them sit on the table where I could actually look at them. They're small and flimsy up close. Not the big immovable truths I thought they were. Mom can keep her 1,000 apologies, unnamed and unspecific, if she wants. I'm going to start counting something else. The times I choose not to gaslight myself into thinking it was all fine. The times I say, no, that wasn't okay, even if I'm the only one in the room who believes it.